Hey son, picture this. You are 7 years old, and somewhere across town, 20 other kids are sitting in a room that smells like French fries and birthday cake, waiting for a clown with a painted smile to lead them through the best afternoon of their entire year. Your mother has signed you up for something that did not exist a decade before and will not exist a decade after, in quite the same way. A McDonald's birthday party in 1983. Tonight, we are stepping into something both completely ordinary and strangely magical. The era when fast food restaurants became the center of childhood celebrations. When Ronald McDonald showed up to your party not as a corporate mascot, but as an actual guest. When the playground equipment could give you second-degree burns and nobody thought twice about it. This is about more than burgers and balloons. This is about what happened when convenience culture collided with childhood joy and for a brief window created something that felt perfect. Before we go further, if you are enjoying these time capsules of American life, I would be grateful if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are now also on Spotify, so if you prefer to listen there, the link is in the description below. Your support means everything. So what did it actually feel like to walk into a McDonald's in 1979 and see 20 kids you knew from school, all gathered in a party room with paper hats and plastic toys? What did the birthday cake taste like when it came out of a McDonald's kitchen? How did it feel to be the birthday kid, knowing everyone was there because of you, in a place that felt both special and completely accessible? What made these parties so central to childhood that decades later, people still remember every detail? And what happened to that whole world? It is 1981 now. The party room has balloons taped to cinder block walls. Someone is wearing a birthday crown made of paper. A mother is setting out paper plates at a long table. And everything is about to make sense. You're absolutely right. I apologize for the confusion. I created the text file, but didn't actually present it to you properly. Let me now share the extended segments. 110. Let us start with the room. Not every McDonald's had one, but the ones that did made it clear the moment you walked in. Usually it was off to the side, separated from the main dining area by a half wall or a door with a small window. The walls were cinder block or paneling painted in primary colors, yellow and red, and sometimes orange. Long tables with attached bench seating, the kind you could not move, ran down the middle. The tables were laminated in a pattern meant to hide spills, which was fortunate because there would be spills. At one end of the room, a spot was designated for the birthday kid, usually marked with extra decorations or a special chair. The room smelled like grease and cleaning solution and, if you were lucky, birthday cake that had not been cut yet. It felt both public and private at the same time. You were still in McDonald's, but this part was yours for the next 2 hours. The door to the party room had a sign on it, something simple, reserved for private party, printed on cardstock and taped to the window. That sign meant something. It meant this space, which was normally just extra seating, had been claimed. The door stayed closed most of the time, or propped open just enough that you could hear the sounds from the main restaurant, the beeping of the registers, the hiss of the fryers, the murmur of people ordering lunch. But inside, the party room had its own atmosphere. The decorations were minimal. Streamers, usually crepe paper in red and yellow, to match the McDonald's colors, taped along the walls or twisted together and hung from the ceiling. Balloons, also red and yellow, tied to the backs of chairs or bunched together in corners. Sometimes there was a happy birthday banner, store-bought, stretched across one wall. The decorations were not elaborate because they did not need to be. This was McDonald's. The place itself was the decoration. The lighting was fluorescent, the same as the rest of the restaurant, bright and even and slightly harsh. There were no dimmer switches, no attempt at ambiance. The brightness made everything visible. You could see every kid, every spill, every crumb on the floor. It was functional lighting, designed for cleaning, not for mood. But somehow it worked. The brightness made the party feel energetic, awake, alive. The tables themselves were bolted to the floor, which meant you could not rearrange them. You sat where there was space, and you made it work. The benches were hard plastic, easy to wipe down, impossible to get comfortable on for more than 20 minutes. But 20 minutes was about how long anyone sat anyway. Kids were in motion, getting up to throw something away, to grab another napkin, to see what someone else had in their Happy Meal box. The floor was tile, easy to mop, and it needed to be mopped because by the end of a party, there would be fries on the floor, bits of bun, smears of ketchup, crumbs of cake. The floor was practical. It was not carpet, it was not wood. It was industrial tile that could handle the chaos of 20 children eating fast food in an enclosed space. The acoustics were terrible. Every sound echoed. 20 kids talking at once became a roar. Someone dropping a tray sounded like a crash. The room amplified everything, which made the party feel louder, bigger, more chaotic than it actually was. But that chaos was part of the appeal. This was not a quiet, controlled event. This was a party. At the end of the room, near where the birthday kids sat, there was usually a small table for presents. The gifts piled up as kids arrived, wrapped in paper that would be torn off later, probably not at the party itself, but at home that night. The present table was a visible reminder of the reason everyone was there. The party room was not beautiful. It was not designed to be. It was designed to be functional, to hold a group of kids for 2 hours, to contain the mess, and to be cleaned quickly afterward. But for those 2 hours, it was yours. That made it special. The invitation usually came at school. Someone would hand you a small card, sometimes homemade, sometimes store-bought, with the McDonald's logo somewhere on it and the party details written in a parent's handwriting. The card told you the date, the time, and which McDonald's, because in most towns by 1980 there were at least 2. Getting invited meant you were in. You were part of the group that would show up on Saturday afternoon and eat burgers with kids you saw every day, but never outside of school. The invitation went on the refrigerator at home, held up with a magnet, and stayed there until the day arrived. You did not RSVP by phone. Your mother just knew you were going, and she told the birthday kid's mother at pickup one day, and that was that. The invitation was a passport to something that felt more significant than it probably was. But that is what made it matter. The invitations were handed out during school, usually at the end of the day when backpacks were being packed and papers were being shoved into folders. The birthday kid, or sometimes their mother if she was picking them up, would stand near the classroom door with a stack of envelopes. They were small, the size of a greeting card, and they were sealed. Your name was written on the outside in cursive or print, sometimes with a sticker to keep the envelope closed. You knew it was coming if you were friends with the birthday kid, but there was still a moment of uncertainty. Would you get one? Were you on the list? When the envelope was placed in your hand, there was relief and then excitement. You opened it right there, or in the car on the way home, and you read the details, even though you already knew what it would say. A party at McDonald's, Saturday at 2. Your mother would read it later and confirm you could go, but you already knew you could. Everyone could go to a McDonald's party. Some invitations were fancier than others. Store-bought invitations came in packs from the drugstore, themed around McDonald's or generic birthday designs, with fill-in-the-blank spaces for the details. The birthday kid's mother would write in the information with a pen, usually blue or black ink, neat handwriting, sometimes a little note at the bottom. Looking forward to seeing you there. Or simply, hope you can come. The note was polite, formal in the way that adults writing to other adults were formal, even though the invitation was for a child. Homemade invitations were less common, but more personal. Construction paper folded in half, crayon drawings of hamburgers or balloons or the golden arches, the details written inside in a child's handwriting. These took more effort, and you could tell. The effort made them feel more special, even if the information was the same. The invitation told you what you needed to know: the date, the time, the location, and sometimes a note about what to expect: cake and games and fun. Or simply, it will be a party at McDonald's. The phrasing varied, but the message was clear. Show up, bring a gift, and you would be part of something. Once you had the invitation, it became part of the week's anticipation. You looked at it on the refrigerator every morning while you ate breakfast. You reminded your mother about it in case she forgot, even though she never forgot. You thought about what the party would be like, what toy would be in your Happy Meal, whether Ronald McDonald would be there. The invitation also marked you as someone who had been included. At school, kids compared notes. Who else got invited? Who was going? The guest list was never a secret, but it was also never explicitly discussed. You just knew. The invitations were handed out in a way that made it clear who was in and who was not, and that clarity, however uncomfortable, was part of childhood social dynamics. By the time the party day arrived, the invitation had served its purpose. It had informed, it had generated excitement, and it had made you feel like you belonged to something. The physical card often got thrown away after the party, or it disappeared into a drawer somewhere, but the fact of having received it stayed with you. Your mother bought the gift, usually a day or two before the party, during an errand run that included the grocery store and the bank. The gift was almost always a toy, something practical and within a narrow price range that all the mothers seemed to know without discussing it. $5 to $10, rarely more. Hot Wheels, a Barbie, a puzzle, a board game, something from the toy aisle at the drugstore or the five and dime. The gift was wrapped at home in paper that had been folded in a drawer for months, reused from another occasion, or bought specifically for this. The corners were taped neatly. A card was attached, signed with your name in your own handwriting if you were old enough, or signed for you if you were not. The gift was handed over at the beginning of the party, placed on a designated table with the others, and you did not think about it again. What mattered was that you brought something, that you participated in the ritual of giving. The gift itself was secondary. The selection process was quick. Your mother knew what kind of toy was appropriate because she had been through this before, either with you or with your siblings or with other kids' parties. She walked down the toy aisle, scanning the shelves, and picked something that seemed right. Not too cheap, not too expensive, not too babyish, not too advanced. The gift had to be neutral enough that it would work whether the birthday kid was into sports or dolls or cars or crafts. For boys, the default was often Hot Wheels, a single car, or a two-pack if your mother was feeling generous. The cars were small, brightly colored, easy to wrap. They were universally liked, or at least universally acceptable. If not Hot Wheels, then maybe a small action figure, a puzzle with a picture of a truck or a superhero, or a pack of baseball cards. For girls, the default was often a Barbie doll, though not one of the expensive ones, a basic Barbie in a simple outfit, in a box that fit easily into a gift bag, or maybe a coloring book with a box of crayons, a craft kit, a small stuffed animal. The gifts were gendered in the way that all toys were gendered in 1982, and nobody questioned it. The wrapping happened at the kitchen table the night before the party, or the morning of. Your mother spread the paper out, measured it against the box, cut it with scissors that left a slightly jagged edge. She folded the corners, taped them down, and smoothed the paper flat. If there was a bow in the drawer, she stuck it on top. If not, the gift went without. The wrapping was functional, not artistic. It did not need to be perfect. It just needed to cover the box. The card was small, the kind that came attached to a gift bag or sold in packs at the drugstore. To Sarah, "Happy Birthday," from Michael. Or just, "Happy Birthday," your name signed at the bottom. Your mother might have written it herself if you were young, or she might have handed you the pen and told you to sign it. The card was an afterthought, a formality, but it was expected. The wrapped gift sat on the counter until it was time to leave for the party. You carried it to the car, careful not to drop it, and you carried it into McDonald's, still careful, and you placed it on the present table with the others. The table filled up quickly, a pile of boxes wrapped in paper, all roughly the same size, all roughly the same shape. Your gift disappeared into the pile, indistinguishable from the rest. You did not watch the birthday kid open it. That usually happened later, at home, after the party was over. Sometimes the birthday kid's mother would send a thank you note a week later, a small card in the mail that said, "Thank you for the gift," or "Thank you for coming to the party." Your mother would read it and nod and put it in the drawer with the other papers that accumulated and eventually got thrown away. The gift was part of the transaction of the party. You brought something, you participated, you fulfilled the expectation. What the birthday kid thought of the gift, whether they played with it or put it in a closet and forgot about it, was not your concern. You had done your part. Your mother drove you. You arrived sometime between noon and 2 in the afternoon, depending on what the invitation said. You walked in through the main entrance, and immediately you saw other kids you recognized, some already in the party room, others arriving at the same time. Everyone was in regular clothes, nothing fancy, jeans and t-shirts and sneakers, because this was McDonald's. The birthday kid was usually already there, wearing something that marked them as special, a birthday crown or a sash, or a shirt that said it was their day. You said hi, you handed over your gift, and you found a spot at the table. The room filled up fast. Within 15 minutes, most of the kids who were coming had arrived. The parents who stayed, usually just a few, sat in the main dining area with coffee, visible through the doorway, but not involved. The party was for the kids. The adults were there to make sure nobody got hurt. The parking lot was full. You circled once, maybe twice, before finding a spot. Your mother turned off the car, and you unbuckled your seatbelt without being told. You grabbed the gift from the back seat, and you walked across the parking lot, past the other cars, past the drive-through line, toward the entrance. The golden arches were visible from the street, bright yellow against the sky, and they marked the destination. Inside, the smell hit you immediately. French fries, grease, something sweet and chemical from the soda fountain. The smell was the same as every other time you had been to McDonald's, but today it meant something different. Today it meant a party. You scanned the dining area for familiar faces. There, near the party room door, you saw someone from your class. And there, already inside the party room, you saw someone else. The recognition was instant, comforting. You were in the right place. Your mother walked you toward the party room, still holding her purse, still in errand mode. She found the birthday kid's mother, said hello, confirmed the pickup time. 2 hours. She would be back at 4, or 3:30, or whenever the invitation had said. The mothers exchanged pleasantries, brief and efficient, and then your mother left. She waved as she walked toward the exit, and you waved back, and then you turned your attention to the party. The birthday kid was easy to spot. They were wearing the crown, a paper thing with points, printed with Happy Birthday in bright letters. The crown sat crooked on their head, and they kept adjusting it, pushing it back when it slipped forward. They were smiling, nervous, excited. This was their day, and everyone was here because of them. You handed over your gift. The birthday kid's mother took it, thanked you, and added it to the pile on the present table. You said, "Happy birthday," because that was what you were supposed to say, and the birthday kid said, "Thanks," and then you moved on. The exchange lasted 5 seconds. The party room was filling up. Kids were claiming spots at the long tables, sitting next to friends, saving seats for other friends who had not arrived yet. You found a spot, sat down, and waited. There was nothing to do yet, so you looked around. You noticed the decorations, the balloons tied to the backs of chairs, the streamers hanging from the ceiling. You noticed the pile of Happy Meal boxes stacked on a side table, ready to be distributed. You noticed the birthday cake on another table, covered with plastic wrap, waiting. More kids arrived. The noise level increased. Conversation started, overlapped, became a general hum of excitement. Someone asked what toy was in the Happy Meal today. Someone else said they heard Ronald McDonald was coming. The information was passed around, confirmed or denied, speculated on. The birthday kid's mother moved around the room, making sure everything was in place. She checked the cake, counted the Happy Meal boxes, straightened a streamer that had come loose. An employee appeared in the doorway, asked if they were ready to start, and the mother said, "Yes, just a few more minutes." By the time everyone had arrived, the room felt full. Not crowded, but occupied. Every seat had a kid in it, every kid was talking to someone, and the energy in the room had reached a peak. It was time to start. Every kid at the party got a Happy Meal. That was the deal, and it was understood. Hamburger, cheeseburger, a small fries, a small drink, and a toy. The meals came in those cardboard boxes with games printed on the outside, puzzles and mazes, and connect the dots that you could do while you waited for everyone to finish eating. The boxes had a handle on top, which made them feel like a gift in themselves, even though you were just getting food. The toys were simple, small plastic figures or cars, tie-ins with whatever movie or television show was popular that year. The toys mattered. Kids compared them, traded them, argued over who got which one. The food was secondary to the toy, but the food was still good. Hot fries, a burger that tasted exactly the way you expected it to taste, a soda that was cold and sweet. The meal was eaten quickly, without ceremony, because there were other things to do. The Happy Meal was not the point of the party, but it was the foundation. The Happy Meals were distributed by an employee, sometimes two, who carried them into the party room on trays. The boxes were handed out one at a time, placed in front of each kid, and the employee asked the same question each time. Hamburger or cheeseburger? Most kids already knew what they wanted. The answer came quickly, and the employee marked the box with a pen or just remembered and moved on to the next kid. The boxes themselves were part of the experience. They were bright red with yellow accents, printed with images of Ronald McDonald or the Hamburglar or Grimace. The games on the outside were simple, designed for short attention spans. A maze where you helped Ronald find his way to a burger. A connect the dots that revealed a picture of fries. A word search with McDonald's related words. You did the games while you waited for your food, or while you ate, or not at all. The games were there, and that was enough. The toy was inside the box, sitting on top of the food, wrapped in plastic. You pulled it out first, before you touched the burger or the fries, because the toy was the reason the Happy Meal existed. The toy might be a small car, a plastic figure from a movie you had seen or wanted to see, a puzzle, a small game. The toys changed every few weeks. part of a promotion tied to whatever was popular that month. Star Wars toys, Muppet Babies, Hot Wheels, Transformers. The toys were cheap, simple, and collectible. Once the toy was out, you opened the plastic wrapping, examined the toy, and immediately looked around to see what everyone else got. Did you get the same toy? A different one? Was yours better or worse? The comparison was instant and automatic. If someone else got a toy you wanted, you asked if they would trade. Sometimes they would. Sometimes they would not. The trading negotiations happened quickly. A few seconds of back and forth, and then you moved on. The food came next. You unwrapped the burger, which was small, thin, warm, and exactly what you expected. The bun was soft, the patty was salty, the cheese was melted, the ketchup and mustard and pickle were in their usual spots. You took a bite, and it tasted like McDonald's. That was the point. The consistency, the predictability, the sameness. Every McDonald's burger tasted the same, and that sameness was comforting. The fries were hot, thin, crispy, and salted. You ate them one at a time, or in handfuls, or you dipped them in ketchup if there were ketchup packets on the table. The fries were always good, better than the burger, better than anything else in the box. They were the highlight of the meal. The drink was in a small paper cup with a plastic lid and a straw. Coca-Cola, Sprite, orange soda, whatever you had asked for. The soda was cold, sweet, fizzy, and you drank it too fast and felt the carbonation in your nose. The cup was small enough that you finished it before you finished the food, and then you either got a refill or you did not. The meal was eaten quickly. 10 minutes, maybe 15. There was no lingering, no savoring, no conversation about the food. You ate because you were hungry, because the food was in front of you, because eating was part of the party. But the meal was not the event. The meal was fuel for what came next. When you finished, you wiped your hands on a napkin, crumpled the burger wrapper in the fries container, and stuffed them back into the Happy Meal box. The box was now trash, but you kept the toy. The toy went into your pocket or stayed on the table in front of you, a small plastic reminder that you had been here, that this had happened. The cake came out after the food was cleared away. It was not a cake from a bakery. It was a McDonald's cake, which meant it was sheet cake, rectangular, frosted in white or chocolate, with Happy Birthday written across the top in colored icing. Sometimes there were decorations, plastic figurines of Ronald McDonald, or the Hamburglar stuck into the frosting, or candles arranged in a number that matched the birthday kid's age. The cake was carried out by an employee or by the birthday kid's mother, and everyone sang. The singing was loud and off-key and enthusiastic, and it lasted about 20 seconds. The birthday kid blew out the candles, and everyone clapped. The cake was cut into squares and served on paper plates with plastic forks. It was sweet and dense, and left a film of frosting on the roof of your mouth. It tasted like every other birthday cake you had ever eaten at McDonald's, which is to say it tasted right. The cake was eaten quickly, and then it was time to move on. The moment the cake appeared, the energy in the room shifted. The noise level dropped slightly, not to silence, but to a focused hum. Everyone knew what was coming. The cake meant the party was reaching its peak, the moment everything had been building toward. The cake was rectangular, large enough to serve 20 or 25 kids with slices to spare. The frosting was thick, applied in smooth swirls, white or chocolate, sometimes both, with Happy Birthday piped across the top in a contrasting color. The letters were neat, professional, done by someone who had written Happy Birthday on 1,000 cakes before. Sometimes the birthday kid's name was added underneath, sometimes not. The decorations on the cake were minimal. Candles, usually the number of years the birthday kid was turning, stuck into the frosting in a line across the center, or arranged in a cluster. If the birthday kid was turning 8, there were 8 candles. If they were turning 6, there were 6. The candles were the cheap kind, thin wax, prone to dripping, the kind that came in a pack from the grocery store. Sometimes there were plastic figures on the cake, small toys that would be removed before the cake was cut and given to the birthday kid to keep. Ronald McDonald standing next to a burger, the Hamburglar holding a bag, Grimace smiling his purple smile. The figures were not edible and they were not valuable, but they were part of the presentation. The cake was carried into the room by the birthday kid's mother, or by an employee if the mother was busy with something else. It was placed on the table in front of the birthday kid, who sat at the head of the table, still wearing the paper crown, still the center of attention. Someone, usually the mother, lit the candles. The small flames flickered in the fluorescent light, barely visible, but visible enough. And then the singing started. Happy birthday to you. The song was sung by everyone in the room, kids and adults, loud and off-key and enthusiastic. Some kids sang the actual words. Some kids sang the funny version they had learned at school. Some kids just made noise. The singing lasted about 20 seconds, long enough to feel ceremonial, short enough that nobody got bored. When the song ended, everyone clapped and cheered, and the birthday kid leaned forward and blew out the candles. Usually it took 1 breath, sometimes 2. The candles went out, and the smoke drifted up, thin and gray, smelling faintly of wax. Someone said, "Make a wish," even though the wish was supposed to be made silently before the candles were blown out, and the birthday kid nodded, confirming they had made one, even if they had not. The cake was cut by the mother, or by an employee with a large knife, straight down in lines, creating squares. The squares were not uniform, some larger, some smaller, but nobody cared. The cake was lifted onto paper plates with a spatula, 1 square per plate, and the plates were passed down the table. Everyone got a piece, no exceptions. You ate the cake with a plastic fork, the kind that bent slightly under the weight of the frosting. The cake was sweet, almost too sweet, and the frosting was sweeter still. The texture was dense, not fluffy, the kind of cake that filled you up after a few bites. But you ate it anyway, because it was cake, because it was part of the party, because refusing cake at a birthday party was not something you did. Some kids scraped the frosting off and ate it first, leaving the cake on the plate. Some kids ate the cake and left the frosting. Most kids ate both quickly without thinking about it. The cake was gone in a few minutes, the plate stacked on the table, smeared with frosting and crumbs. At the end of the party, each kid got a small bag to take home. Inside were a few pieces of candy, maybe a small toy, a balloon if there were extras, and sometimes a leftover plastic figure from the cake. The bag was nothing elaborate, just a paper sack or a plastic bag tied with a ribbon. But it marked the end of the party. You held onto it as you walked out, and you opened it in the car on the way home. The contents were examined, traded with siblings, and then forgotten within a few days. The bag itself was not the point. The point was that you left with something, that the party extended just beyond the walls of McDonald's and into the rest of your afternoon. The bags were prepared in advance, usually by the birthday kid's mother, sometimes with help from the birthday kid. The bags were laid out on a table at home the night before, filled one by one, tied closed, and brought to the party in a larger bag or a box. At the end of the party, the bags were handed out, 1 per kid, as everyone was getting ready to leave. The contents were simple. A few pieces of candy, the kind you could buy in bulk at the grocery store. Tootsie Rolls, miniature Hershey bars, lollipops, maybe a pack of Smarties or a small bag of M&Ms. The candy was generic, nothing expensive, nothing fancy, but it was candy, and that was enough. Sometimes there was a small toy, a plastic ring, a bouncy ball, a tiny puzzle, a whistle, a keychain. The kind of toys you found in the party favor aisle at the store, sold in packs of 20 or 30 for a few dollars. The toys were cheap, disposable, the kind of thing you played with for a few minutes and then forgot about. But in the moment, they mattered. If there were balloons left over from the decorations, they were untied from the chairs and handed out. 1 balloon per kid, or 2 if there were enough. The balloons were helium-filled, floating on strings, red or yellow, sometimes with Happy Birthday printed on them. You held the string as you walked out, and the balloon floated above your head, tugging slightly in the breeze when you stepped outside. If there were plastic figures from the cake, and if there were extras, they went into the bags too. Ronald McDonald, the Hamburglar, Grimace. The figures were small, a few inches tall, made of cheap plastic, but they were part of the party, and that gave them value. The bags were tied closed with a ribbon curled at the ends, or twisted shut if they were plastic. Your name was not on the bag. The bags were identical, and it did not matter which one you got. You took the one that was handed to you, said thank you, and held on to it. You did not open the bag at the party. You waited until you were in the car, or until you got home, because opening it immediately felt greedy, impatient. You held the bag on your lap, feeling the weight of it, wondering what was inside, even though you could guess. In the car, on the way home, you opened the bag. You pulled out the candy first, counted the pieces, decided which one you would eat first. You pulled out the toy, examined it, decided whether it was worth keeping or whether it would end up in a drawer somewhere. You pulled out the balloon, if there was one, and held the string, watching the balloon bump against the roof of the car. If you had siblings, you compared bags. You traded candy, argued over who got the better toy, negotiated. The bag's contents were currency for about 10 minutes, and then they were just stuff. By the next day, the candy was eaten, the toy was lost or forgotten, the balloon had deflated or floated away. The bag itself was thrown away, crumpled up and tossed in the trash. But for a few hours the bag had been important. It had been proof that you had been to the party, that you had been part of something. If your party was lucky, Ronald McDonald appeared. Not every party had him because he was not always available and because hiring him cost extra. But when he showed up, he arrived in full costume, the red wig, the yellow jumpsuit, the white face paint, the oversized red shoes. He came into the party room and immediately became the center of attention. Ronald led games, made balloon animals, did magic tricks that were obvious and delightful, and posed for pictures with every kid who wanted one. He did not speak much, or if he did, his voice was high and cheerful and did not quite match the oversized presence of the costume. Some kids loved him. Some kids were terrified. Most fell somewhere in between. Ronald stayed for 20 or 30 minutes and then he left, waving as he went, and the party continued without him. His appearance was the high point, the thing that made your party different from a regular meal at McDonald's. Years later, you would remember that Ronald McDonald came to your party, even if you could not remember what he did. Ronald McDonald did not just walk in. He made an entrance. The door to the party room would open, and there he was, filling the doorway, larger than life, waving with both hands. The kids nearest the door noticed first, and they would shout, "Ronald's here!" And the rest of the room would turn to look. He was tall, or he seemed tall, because of the shoes and the wig and the way he carried himself. The costume was bright, impossible to ignore. The yellow jumpsuit with red and white stripes. The red wig, curly and exaggerated, sitting high on his head. The white face paint, thick and smooth, with red lips painted into a permanent smile. The oversized red shoes, floppy and ridiculous, that made a slapping sound when he walked. Ronald did not speak much, and when he did, his voice was high-pitched, exaggerated, almost cartoonish. He sounded the way a clown was supposed to sound, cheerful and enthusiastic and slightly unreal. He said things like, "Hello, everyone," and "Who's having a birthday today?" And the kids responded with shouts and laughter and chaos. Some kids rushed toward him immediately, excited, wanting to be near him, wanting to touch the costume or the wig or the shoes. These were the kids who loved Ronald, who had seen him on television commercials, who thought of him as a friend. They crowded around him, shouting his name, asking him questions, pulling at his sleeves. Other kids stayed back, uncertain, wary. These were the kids who were not sure about Ronald, who found the costume unsettling, who did not like the face paint or the exaggerated features or the way he moved. They watched from their seats, keeping their distance, not willing to fully commit to the experience. A few kids were terrified. They saw the costume, the painted face, the oversized shoes, and they wanted nothing to do with it. They cried, or they hid behind their friends, or they left the room entirely, standing in the doorway with a parent, peeking in but refusing to come closer. For these kids, Ronald McDonald was not fun. He was scary. Ronald led games, simple games, the kind that required no equipment and could be played in a small space. Simon Says, with Ronald as Simon, giving instructions in his high-pitched voice. Follow the Leader, with Ronald leading the line of kids around the room, doing exaggerated movements that the kids tried to copy. Red light, green light, with Ronald calling out the commands, and the kids freezing in place or running forward. The games were loud, chaotic, and brief. Ronald kept them moving, never letting any one game go on too long, keeping the energy high. He praised the kids constantly, even when they messed up. "Good job. You're doing great. Everyone's a winner." The praise was generic, but it felt good. Ronald made balloon animals. He pulled balloons from a bag, long thin balloons in bright colors, and he twisted them into shapes. A dog, a sword, a flower. The balloon animals were simple, the kind of thing anyone could learn to make with a little practice. But to the kids, they seemed like magic. Ronald handed the balloon animals out, one per kid, and the kids held on to them carefully, afraid they would pop. Ronald did magic tricks. He pulled a coin from behind a kid's ear. He made a scarf disappear into his hand and reappear from his pocket. He guessed which hand a kid was holding a small ball in, and he was always right. Or he pretended to be wrong, and then revealed he had been joking. The tricks were obvious, the kind of thing you could see through if you were paying attention. But the kids did not care. They were delighted anyway. Ronald posed for pictures. He knelt down so he was at the same height as the kids, and he put his arm around whoever wanted a picture. And he smiled his painted smile while a parent snapped a photo with a camera. The photos would be developed a week later, printed on glossy paper, and tucked into a photo album or stuck to a refrigerator with a magnet. In the photos, Ronald looked exactly the way he looked in person, bright and cheerful and slightly unreal. After 20 or 30 minutes, Ronald left. He waved goodbye, said, "See you next time," in his high-pitched voice, and walked out of the party room. The kids waved back, shouting, "Bye, Ronald!" And then he was gone. The party continued without him, but his presence lingered. For the rest of the party, kids talked about what Ronald had done, what game they had played, which balloon animal they had gotten. The games were simple and required no equipment. Simon Says, red light, green light, musical chairs, if there were enough chairs, which there usually were not. The games were led by an employee or by the birthday kid's mother, and they lasted just long enough to burn off some of the energy that came from cake and soda. Prizes were small, stickers or plastic rings, and everyone got something eventually because the point was not competition, it was participation. The games were loud, chaotic, and over quickly. Nobody remembers who won. What you remember is the feeling of running in a circle with other kids, all of you laughing, all of you part of something that felt bigger than it was. The games happened after the cake, when the kids were full of sugar and energy and needed something to do. The birthday kid's mother, or the McDonald's employee who had been assigned to the party, stood at the front of the room and clapped her hands to get everyone's attention. "Okay, everyone, time for some games." The response was immediate. Kids who had been sitting jumped up. Kids who had been talking stopped. Everyone turned toward the front of the room, ready to participate, ready to move. Simon Says was the most common game because it required nothing but a voice and a group of kids. The leader stood at the front and gave commands. Simon Says, touch your toes. Simon Says, pat your head. Jump up and down. The kids followed along, touching their toes, patting their heads, jumping. If the command did not start with Simon Says, and you did it anyway, you were out. You sat down, and you watched the rest of the game from the sidelines. The game moved fast. Commands came one after another, rapid fire, designed to catch kids off guard. Simon Says, spin around. Sit down. Simon Says, clap your hands. Kids dropped out quickly, sometimes because they messed up, sometimes because they were not paying attention, sometimes because they were laughing too hard to focus. By the end, only a few kids were left standing, and then one kid won, and everyone clapped. Red light, green light was another favorite. The kids lined up on one side of the room, and the leader stood on the other side, facing away. When the leader said green light, the kids ran toward her. When she said red light and turned around, the kids had to freeze. If you were caught moving, you went back to the start. The first kid to reach the leader won. The game was chaotic. Kids ran too fast, could not stop in time, wobbled as they tried to freeze, fell over. The leader called out commands quickly, switching between green light and red light without warning, trying to catch as many kids as possible. The room filled with the sound of running feet, shouts, laughter. Musical chairs was played if there were enough chairs, which there usually were not. The chairs from the table were rearranged in a circle, one fewer chair than there were kids, and music played from a small radio or a tape player if someone had thought to bring one. The kids walked around the circle while the music played, and when the music stopped, everyone scrambled for a chair. The kid left standing was out. One chair was removed, and the game continued. The music started and stopped, until only one kid and one chair were left. The prizes for winning were small. Stickers, the kind you found in packs at the drugstore, with cartoon characters or smiley faces. Plastic rings, the kind you got from a vending machine, brightly colored, adjustable, worth nothing but fun to wear. Temporary tattoos, the kind you applied with water and that washed off in the bath that night. The prizes were handed out, and the winners wore them proudly, showing them off, comparing them with other kids. But the games were not really about winning. They were about participation, about burning energy, about doing something together. Everyone got a prize eventually, even the kids who did not win, because the birthday kid's mother had bought extra stickers and rings and tattoos, and she handed them out at the end to make sure nobody felt left out. The games lasted 15 or 20 minutes, and then they were over. The kids were sweaty, tired, happy. The energy in the room had peaked and started to come down. It was almost time to go to the playground, or almost time for parents to start arriving to pick up their kids. After the games, if the McDonald's had a playground, the kids were released to it. The playground was usually outside, unless the restaurant had an indoor play place, which some of the newer ones did by the early 80s. The equipment was metal, painted in primary colors and hot to the touch if the sun had been on it. There were slides, climbing structures, and sometimes a merry-go-round or a seesaw. The ground underneath was concrete or gravel, no padding, no rubber mats. Kids climbed, slid, and occasionally fell. Minor injuries were expected and ignored. A scraped knee, a bump on the head, nothing that required more than a quick check and a reassurance that you were fine. The playground was where the party transitioned from structured to free, where kids who had been sitting for an hour could finally move. Parents watched from inside, through the windows, and intervened only if something looked serious. The playground was the tail end of the party, the wind down before everyone went home. The announcement that it was time for the playground was met with cheers. The kids who had been sitting, who had been playing games in a confined space, who had been indoors for over an hour, were ready to run. The door to the outside was opened, and the kids poured through it, a rush of bodies and noise, spilling into the sunlight or the shade, depending on the time of day. The playground was small, fenced in, visible from the dining area through large windows. It was not elaborate. A slide, a climbing structure, maybe a set of monkey bars, maybe a merry-go-round or a seesaw if the playground was older. The equipment was metal, painted red and yellow to match the McDonald's colors, and the paint was chipped in places, worn down by years of use. The slide was the main attraction. It was tall, or it seemed tall when you were 7 or 8, with a ladder on one side and a steep slope on the other. The metal was hot if the sun had been on it, hot enough to burn the backs of your legs if you went down in shorts. You climbed the ladder, sat at the top for a moment, and then pushed yourself forward, sliding down fast, your hands gripping the sides, landing in the dirt or gravel at the bottom. The climbing structure was a jungle gym, a framework of metal bars that you could climb on, hang from, swing through. There was no obvious purpose to it, no goal, no destination. You just climbed. You pulled yourself up, found footholds, balanced on narrow bars, and tried not to fall. Falling was part of the experience. You fell, you landed on the ground, and you got back up and climbed again. The merry-go-round, if there was one, was a flat metal disc with bars to hold on to. A few kids would sit or stand on it, holding the bars, and another kid would push, running in a circle, making the disc spin. The kids on the merry-go-round held on tight, feeling the centrifugal force pulling them outward, laughing as the world blurred around them. The pushing kid ran until they were tired, and then they jumped on, and someone else took over the pushing. The seesaw, if there was one, required a partner. You sat on one end, your partner sat on the other, and you pushed off the ground with your feet, sending your partner into the air. The seesaw went up and down, and you tried to time it so that you hit the ground hard, sending your partner as high as possible. Sometimes one kid jumped off unexpectedly, and the other kid came crashing down, hard and sudden, a jolt that hurt but was not serious enough to stop playing. The ground underneath the equipment was concrete or gravel, sometimes dirt, never grass, never rubber mats or wood chips. When you fell, and you did fall, you landed hard. You scraped your knee or your elbow or your hand. You looked at the scrape, saw the blood or the dirt or both, and you decided whether it was worth going inside to tell someone. Usually it was not. You wiped it on your pants or you ignored it and you kept playing. The parents watched from inside through the windows. They saw the kids climbing, sliding, running, falling. They saw the chaos, the noise, the energy. They did not intervene unless something looked serious. A kid crying, a kid holding their arm funny, a kid sitting on the ground and not getting up. Otherwise, the parents stayed inside, drinking coffee, talking to each other, letting the kids play. The playground time lasted 15 or 20 minutes, long enough for the kids to burn off the last of their energy, short enough that nobody got bored. The birthday kid's mother eventually came outside or stood in the doorway and called out that it was time to go back inside. Some parents were starting to arrive for pickup. The party was ending. The kids came back inside slowly, reluctantly. They were sweaty, dirty, tired, happy. They had used the playground the way it was meant to be used, fully and without restraint. They had climbed and slid and run and fallen, and they were ready to go home. You're absolutely right. I apologize for the confusion. I created the text file, but didn't actually present it to you properly. Let me now share the extended segments. 1:10, most parents dropped their kids off and left. They would return at the designated time to pick them up, and in between, the kids were on their own, supervised by the birthday kid's parents and maybe 1 or 2 McDonald's employees who had been assigned to keep an eye on things. But some parents stayed. They sat in the main dining area with coffee or soda, reading a magazine or talking to each other, glancing occasionally toward the party room to make sure everything was fine. These were usually parents who did not trust their kid to behave, or parents who had nowhere else to be, or parents who just wanted to be nearby in case something went wrong. They were not part of the party, but they were present, and their presence was reassuring in a way you did not think about at the time. The parents who stayed claimed tables near the party room door, close enough to see in, far enough away to not be intrusive. They ordered coffee, black or with cream and sugar, and they sat with it cooling in a styrofoam cup. Some brought a magazine or newspaper and read while they waited. Others sat with other parents who had also stayed, making small talk about school or weather or nothing in particular. They were mothers mostly. Fathers stayed less often, and when they did, they usually looked uncomfortable, like they were not sure what to do with themselves. They would sit with a newspaper folded in front of them, or they would stand near the windows, hands in their pockets, watching the parking lot, waiting for the time to pass. The mothers who stayed were vigilant without being obvious about it. They glanced toward the party room every few minutes, checking to see if everything looked okay. They listened for the tone of the noise. If the noise was happy chaos, they relaxed. If the noise changed, if someone sounded like they were crying, or if it got too quiet, they would look up, ready to intervene if needed. Some of these mothers were the worriers. They did not trust that their kid would behave, or they worried that their kid would get hurt, or they worried that their kid would have a meltdown and embarrass them. These mothers stayed because leaving felt too risky. They needed to be nearby, just in case. Some of these mothers had nowhere else to be. It was Saturday afternoon, and they had driven to McDonald's. And driving home only to drive back 2 hours later felt like a waste. So they stayed. They used the time to read, or to think, or to do nothing at all. The 2 hours became a break from the rest of their day, a pocket of time where they were responsible for nothing except being present. Some of these mothers stayed because they wanted to be part of it, even from a distance. They wanted to see their kid having fun, to hear the laughter, to know that the party was going well. They were not helicopter parents in the way that term would come to mean later. They were just mothers who liked being nearby. The employees mostly ignored the parents who stayed. The parents were not ordering food after that first cup of coffee, and they were not causing problems, so there was no reason to pay attention to them. The parents sat quietly, took up a table or two, and waited. The party room door stayed closed most of the time, but occasionally it would open. A kid would come out to use the bathroom, or to tell their mother something, or just to check in. The mother would nod, say something reassuring, and the kid would go back inside. The interaction lasted a few seconds. When the party ended, the parents who had stayed were ready. They saw the other parents arriving for pickup, and they stood up, gathered their things, and walked toward the party room. They found their kid, said thank you to the birthday kid's mother, and left. The 2 hours were over, and they had been there the whole time, quiet and unnoticed, but present. The smell was distinct. It was French fries, always French fries, mixed with the grease from the fryers and the faint chemical tang of the cleaning solution used on the tables. If the party was in the morning or early afternoon, there was also the smell of breakfast, eggs, and sausage lingering from the early shift. If there were smokers in the main dining area, and there usually were, the smell of cigarette smoke drifted in, faint but present. The party room itself smelled like cake once it was cut, and like the paper and plastic of the decorations, and like children, which is to say like sweat and sugar and energy. The smell was part of the experience, as much as the food or the games. It was the smell of a McDonald's birthday party, and it has not existed in quite that combination since. You noticed the smell the moment you walked in. It hit you as the door opened, a wall of warm air carrying the scent of food and grease and people. The smell was immediate and overwhelming in the way that smells in enclosed spaces always are. But within a few seconds, you stopped noticing it. Your nose adjusted, and the smell became background, part of the environment, no longer distinct. But if you left and came back in, if you went outside to the playground and then returned to the party room, the smell hit you again. It was always there, constant, unchanging, the olfactory signature of McDonald's in the 1980s. The fries were the dominant note, the smell of fries cooking in beef tallow, which is what McDonald's used until 1990. The tallow gave the fries a rich, savory smell that was different from the vegetable oil smell that came later. It was deeper, heavier, more satisfying. The smell filled the entire restaurant, not just the kitchen. It seeped into the dining area, into the party room, into your clothes. You would smell like McDonald's fries for the rest of the day. The grease smell was underneath the fries. It was the smell of oil heated to high temperatures, used and reused, filtered but never fully clean. It was not a bad smell exactly, but it was heavy, almost sticky, the kind of smell that clung to surfaces and fabrics. The walls of McDonald's smelled like grease. The tables smelled like grease. The air itself smelled like grease. The cleaning solution added a chemical sharpness to the mix. The tables were wiped down constantly between customers after spills. Whenever an employee walked by with a rag and a spray bottle, the solution was industrial, strong, designed to cut through grease and kill bacteria. It smelled faintly of ammonia or bleach, something sterile and harsh. The smell mixed with the food smells, creating a combination that was uniquely McDonald's. If the party was in the morning, the breakfast smells were still present. Eggs, scrambled or fried, with that slightly sulfurous smell that eggs have when cooked in quantity. Sausage, greasy and salty, with a smell that was heavy and lingering. Hash browns, fried until crispy, adding another layer to the grease smell. The breakfast smells faded as the day went on, but in the early hours they were strong. The cigarette smoke was everywhere. People smoked at their tables while they ate. Parents smoked while they watched their kids play. Employees smoked in the back, and the smoke drifted out through the vents and the doors. The smoke mixed with the food smells, creating a combination that people who did not grow up with it find hard to imagine. The smell of fries and cigarettes. The smell of burgers and smoke. It was normal. It was just how places smelled. In the party room, once the cake was cut, the sugar smell became dominant for a few minutes. The frosting sweet and artificial. The cake itself, dense and sugary. The smell of birthday candles burning and then being blown out. That brief scent of wax smoke. The cake smell did not last long, but while it was there, it was strong. The smell of children was also present, though harder to define. Sweat from running around, from playing games, from the heat of 20 bodies in a small room. The smell of excitement, of energy, of sugar rushing through small bloodstreams. The smell of plastic toys, of paper decorations, of balloons. It all combined into something that smelled like childhood, like a party, like a specific moment in time. When you left McDonald's after the party, you carried the smell with you. It was in your hair, in your clothes, on your skin. Your mother would comment on it when you got in the car. You smell like McDonald's. It was not a complaint, just an observation. You did smell like McDonald's, and that smell would stay with you until you took a bath that night. And even then, faintly, it lingered. Before McDonald's parties became common, most birthday parties happened at home. In the backyard, if the weather was good. In the living room, if it was not. Homemade cake, homemade decorations, games organized by the mother, and a mess that had to be cleaned up afterward. The McDonald's party solved the mess problem. It moved the chaos out of the house and into a space designed to handle it. The mother of the birthday kid no longer had to bake, decorate, clean, or worry about whether the house was presentable. She just had to show up, and McDonald's took care of the rest. The trade-off was that the party felt less personal, less unique. Every McDonald's party looked more or less the same. But for many families, especially those where both parents worked or where money was tight, the convenience was worth it. The McDonald's party was not better than a home party. It was easier, and easier was enough. A home party required planning. The mother would start thinking about it weeks in advance. What kind of cake to bake, what decorations to put up, what games to organize, whether to have the party inside or outside, whether to invite the whole class or just a few friends. The decisions piled up, and each one required thought and effort. The cake was usually homemade, a box mix, Betty Crocker or Duncan Hines, baked in round pans or a sheet pan, cooled and frosted. The frosting was also from a mix, or made from scratch if the mother was ambitious. The cake was decorated with candles, maybe some plastic figures, maybe the birthday kid's name piped in icing. The cake was personal, made specifically for this child, this party, this day. It took time, it took effort, and it had to be done the day before, or the morning of, because a cake could not sit for too long. The decorations were also homemade or store-bought on a budget. Streamers taped to the walls, balloons blown up by hand, because helium balloons were expensive and not always necessary. A happy birthday banner, reused from a previous party or bought new from the drugstore. The decorations were put up the morning of the party, and they would be taken down that evening, crumpled and thrown away, or folded and saved for the next time. The games were organized by the mother. Pin the tail on the donkey, musical chairs, Simon Says, red light, green light, treasure hunts if the party was outside. The mother led the games, kept the kids engaged, handed out small prizes, and tried to make sure everyone had fun. It was work. It was constant management, and it lasted for hours. The mess was inevitable. Crumbs on the floor, frosting on the walls, juice spilled on the carpet, wrapping paper torn and scattered. The living room or backyard would be destroyed by the end of the party, and the mother would spend the rest of the evening cleaning it up, vacuuming, wiping, picking up, throwing away. The cleanup was the price of hosting a party at home. The cost of a home party could be low if you kept it simple. A box cake mix, a few decorations, some snacks, maybe pizza or hot dogs for lunch. The total cost could be $20 or $30, less than a McDonald's party. But the cost in time and effort was much higher. A home party required hours of work before, during, and after. A McDonald's party required a phone call and showing up. For mothers who worked or who had multiple children or who just did not have the time or energy to organize a party at home, McDonald's was a solution. It was not the ideal solution, maybe, but it was a practical one. It took the burden off the mother and put it on the restaurant. The mother could show up, enjoy the party with her child, and leave without having to clean up. That was worth something. The trade-off was that the party felt less personal. Every McDonald's party looked the same. The same room, the same decorations, the same food, the same cake. There was no customization, no personal touch. You could not choose the theme or the games or the menu. You got what McDonald's offered, and that was that. But for the kids, that sameness was not necessarily a bad thing. Kids did not care that every McDonald's party looked the same. They cared that they were at McDonald's, that they were getting happy meals, that Ronald McDonald might show up. The standardization that made the party feel impersonal to adults made it feel exciting and special to kids. Home parties continued, of course. Not every family switched to McDonald's. Some mothers preferred to host at home, to have control over every detail, to make the party exactly what they wanted it to be. Some families could not afford McDonald's, or did not have a McDonald's nearby, or just did not like fast food. Home parties and McDonald's parties coexisted, and families chose based on their circumstances, their preferences, their budgets. But for a significant portion of middle-class families in the early 80s, the McDonald's party became the default. It was easy, it was affordable, it was reliable, and that was enough. A McDonald's birthday party was cheap. In the late 70s and early 80s, the package cost somewhere between $30 and $50, depending on how many kids were coming and what extras were included. That covered the Happy Meals, the cake, the decorations, and the use of the party room for 2 hours. If you wanted Ronald McDonald to appear, that was extra, maybe another $20 or $30. For many families, this was affordable in a way that other entertainment options were not. Bowling alleys, skating rinks, and movie theaters all cost more, especially when you added up the per-child cost. McDonald's offered a flat rate, and you knew what you were getting. The low cost made it accessible, which made it popular, which made it the default option for a significant portion of middle-class childhood birthday celebrations in this era. The party package was straightforward. You called the restaurant, or you walked in and spoke to the manager, and you booked a date and time. The manager would ask how many kids were coming, and you would give your best estimate. 10 kids, 15 kids, 20 kids. The number determined the cost because each kid got a Happy Meal and a slice of cake. A Happy Meal in 1981 cost around $1.65. For a party of 15 kids, that was about $25 just for the food. The cake was included in the package, usually adding another $5 to $10. The decorations, the use of the party room, the cleanup, all of that was rolled into the total cost. The final price for a basic party, no extras, was typically between $30 and $50, depending on the location and the exact number of kids. That price was competitive. A bowling alley charged per person per game, plus shoe rental. For 15 kids, that could easily run $70 or $80, and that was before food. A skating rink was similar, with admission and skate rental adding up quickly. A movie theater, if you rented it out for a private party, was prohibitively expensive for most families. McDonald's undercut all of these options by offering a flat rate that included food, space, and entertainment. The low cost made the McDonald's party accessible to families who could not afford more elaborate celebrations. Working-class families, single-parent households, families with multiple children who could not justify spending $100 or more on one kid's birthday. For these families, the McDonald's party was not just convenient, it was the only realistic option. It allowed them to give their child a party without financial strain. The extras were optional but popular. Ronald McDonald was the main extra. Hiring him cost an additional $20 to $30, depending on the location and the length of his appearance. For some families, that was worth it. Ronald McDonald elevated the party from standard to special. For other families, it was too much, and they skipped it. The party was still a party without him. Some locations offered other extras: a party coordinator who would lead games and activities, extra decorations, a special cake with custom decorations. These extras added to the cost, but they were not necessary. The basic package was enough for most families. The cost also compared favorably to home parties, when you factored in time and effort. A home party might cost less in direct expenses, but it required hours of work. Baking the cake, setting up decorations, organizing games, cleaning up afterward. If you valued your time at all, the McDonald's party was a bargain. You paid a little more money, but you saved hours of work. The affordability of the McDonald's party also made it more frequent. Because it was cheap, families were more willing to do it every year. A child could have a McDonald's birthday party at age 6, 7, 8, and the parents would not feel like they were overspending. If parties cost $100 or more, parents might skip some years, or alternate between big parties and small family celebrations. But at $30 to $50, the McDonald's party could be annual. The low cost also meant that reciprocity was manageable. If your kid was invited to 5 or 6 McDonald's parties in a year, you were expected to invite those kids to your kid's party. That reciprocity was easier when parties were cheap. If parties cost $100 each, the social obligation became a financial burden. But at McDonald's prices, reciprocity was sustainable. The cost was part of what made the McDonald's party a cultural phenomenon. It was not just that it was convenient or fun. It was that it was affordable. It democratized the birthday party, making it accessible to a much wider range of families than previous celebration options had been. For McDonald's employees, birthday parties were extra work. They had to set up the room, serve the food, lead the games if Ronald McDonald was not there, and clean up afterward. The parties happened during regular operating hours, which meant employees were juggling party responsibilities with their normal duties, taking orders, making food, cleaning the dining area. The party room was often understaffed, and the kids were loud, messy, and demanding. But the parties were also routine. They happened every weekend, sometimes multiple times a day, and employees got used to them. The parties were just part of the job, like working the fryer or the drive-through window. Some employees enjoyed them, especially the younger ones who liked kids. Others tolerated them. None of them imagined that decades later, people would look back on these parties with nostalgia. The party shift was assigned, usually to whoever was working on Saturday afternoon. The employee might be a high school student working part-time, or a young adult working full-time, or occasionally someone older who needed the work. The party shift was not coveted. It was extra responsibility without extra pay, and it meant dealing with 20 kids hopped up on sugar and excitement. Setting up the party room took 15 or 20 minutes. The employee would hang streamers, tie balloons to chairs, set out paper plates and napkins, and arrange the Happy Meal boxes on a side table. The cake would be retrieved from the walk-in cooler or freezer where it had been stored and placed on a table. The setup was quick and formulaic. Every party looked the same because every party was set up the same way. During the party, the employee's job was to distribute the Happy Meals, serve the cake, and supervise the kids. The supervision was minimal. The birthday kids' parents were usually there, and they handled most of the actual management. The employee was there to make sure nobody got hurt and to intervene if something went wrong. Mostly, the employees stood near the door or near the food table and waited for the 2 hours to pass. If Ronald McDonald was not there, the employee was also responsible for leading games. This was the worst part of the party shift for many employees. Leading games meant getting the kids' attention, explaining the rules, keeping them engaged, and dealing with the chaos that inevitably followed. Some employees were good at this. They were energetic, enthusiastic, willing to play along. Other employees were awkward, uncomfortable, just trying to get through it. The kids could tell the difference, and they responded accordingly. Serving the cake was straightforward, but messy. The employee would carry the cake into the room, light the candles, and place it in front of the birthday kid. After the singing and the candle blowing, the employee would cut the cake into squares and distribute it on paper plates. The frosting would get on the employee's hands, on the knife, on the table. Cake would crumble, fall to the floor, get smeared on faces and hands. The mess was expected. Cleanup after the party was the final responsibility. The employee would collect the trash, wipe down the tables, sweep the floor, and take down the decorations. The streamers would be thrown away, the balloons either thrown away or given to kids who wanted them. The party room would be returned to its default state, ready for the next party or for regular seating. The cleanup took another 15 or 20 minutes. The pay for this work was minimum wage. In 1980, minimum wage was $3.10 per hour. By 1985, it was $3.35. The party shift was 2 hours of setup, supervision, and cleanup, which meant the employee earned around $6 or $7 for the entire shift. It was not good money, but it was money, and for many teenagers, it was their first job. Some employees enjoyed the party shift because it broke up the monotony of regular work. Instead of standing at the register or flipping burgers for 8 hours, they got to do something different. They got to interact with kids, see them having fun, be part of something celebratory. For employees who liked kids, the party shift was a nice change of pace. Other employees hated the party shift. They found it stressful, chaotic, exhausting. They did not like kids, or they did not like the mess, or they just did not like the extra responsibility. For these employees, the party shift was something to endure, not enjoy. Most employees fell somewhere in between. They were neutral about the party shift. It was work, like any other work. It had to be done, so they did it. They set up the room, served the food, led the games, cleaned up, and moved on to the next task. The parties were routine, unremarkable, forgettable. None of the employees thought about the parties in terms of nostalgia or cultural significance. They were just doing their job, earning minimum wage, getting through the shift. They did not imagine that decades later, the people who attended those parties would remember them fondly, would talk about them, would write about them. To the employees, the parties were just work. The peak years for McDonald's birthday parties were roughly 1979 through 1987. This was after the Happy Meal had been introduced and before the culture began shifting toward more elaborate, more expensive, more individualized celebrations. During this window, having your birthday party at McDonald's was not just acceptable, it was desirable. It was what kids asked for and what parents were happy to provide. The parties were frequent enough that McDonald's built infrastructure around them, party rooms in new locations, training for employees, partnerships with toy companies for themed parties. The parties were a revenue stream. but they were also a cultural phenomenon. They were part of how childhood worked in suburban America in the early 80s. The Happy Meal launched in 1979, and it changed everything. Before the Happy Meal, McDonald's was just a place to eat. After the Happy Meal, McDonald's became a place for kids. The toys, the box with games on it, the smaller portions designed specifically for children, all of it made McDonald's kid-friendly in a way it had not been before. The Happy Meal made the birthday party concept viable. You could feed a group of kids easily and cheaply, and they would be excited about it because of the toys. By 1980, McDonald's birthday parties were becoming standard. Not every McDonald's had a party room yet, but the ones that did were booking them regularly. Parents were discovering that the McDonald's party solved problems. It was cheap, convenient, and kids loved it. Word spread. One mother would book a McDonald's party, other mothers would see how easy it was, and they would book one too. McDonald's corporate recognized the opportunity. The parties were driving foot traffic, increasing sales, and building brand loyalty among families with young children. McDonald's began building party rooms into new locations as a standard feature. The rooms were small, utilitarian, nothing fancy, but they were there. A dedicated space for parties meant more parties could be booked, which meant more revenue. The company also began offering party packages that were standardized across locations. The same basic package, the same price range, the same setup. This standardization made it easier for parents to know what they were getting, and it made it easier for McDonald's to deliver consistent experiences. The party package became a product, like the Big Mac or the Happy Meal. How toy companies saw the opportunity too. Partnerships between McDonald's and movie studios, television networks, and toy manufacturers created themed Happy Meals with collectible toys. Star Wars, E.T., Transformers, My Little Pony. The toys changed every few weeks and kids wanted to collect them all. The themed toys made Happy Meals more desirable, which made birthday parties more desirable. Kids wanted McDonald's parties because they wanted the toys. Ronald McDonald became a fixture at parties during this period. The character had existed since the 1960s, but in the early 80s, Ronald became more active in live appearances. McDonald's hired actors to wear the costume and appear at parties, grand openings, and community events. Ronald's presence at a birthday party elevated it from ordinary to special. Parents were willing to pay extra for Ronald because they knew it would make their kid happy. The parties were everywhere. Every weekend, in every suburb, in every town with a McDonald's, there were birthday parties happening. Multiple parties at multiple locations, all following the same format, all creating the same memories. The ubiquity of the parties made them normal. Having your birthday party at McDonald's was not unusual or special in the sense of being rare. It was special because it was fun, because it was yours, because everyone else was doing it too. The peak lasted for about 8 or 9 years. From the late 70s through the mid-80s, the McDonald's birthday party was the default option for middle-class childhood celebrations. It was accessible, affordable, and desirable. It worked for parents, it worked for kids, and it worked for McDonald's. But by the late 80s, things were starting to change. The culture around children's birthdays was shifting. Parents were beginning to expect more, to want more, to spend more. The simple, standardized McDonald's party started to feel insufficient. Competitors were emerging, offering alternatives that felt more exciting, more unique. The peak was ending, though nobody knew it at the time. By the early 90s, the McDonald's birthday party was beginning to fade. Not disappear, but fade. Parents started looking for alternatives, places that felt more special, more unique. Discovery Zone, Chuck E. Cheese, and later indoor play centers and trampoline parks began pulling kids away from McDonald's. The culture around children's birthdays was changing. Parties were becoming more elaborate, more expensive, more Pinterest perfect. The simple, standardized McDonald's party started to feel cheap in a way it had not before. McDonald's itself was changing too, moving away from the family-friendly, community-focused model and toward faster service, drive-through dominance, and a more adult-oriented menu. The party rooms were phased out in many locations, converted into additional seating or storage. By the late 90s, McDonald's birthday parties still existed, but they were no longer the default. The shift happened gradually. It was not a sudden change, but a slow drift away from the McDonald's party model. Parents began hearing about other options, seeing other kids' parties at different venues, and thinking, maybe we should try that instead. Chuck E. Cheese had existed since the late 70s, but it expanded aggressively in the 80s and 90s. The pitch was simple: pizza, arcade games, and animatronic entertainment all in one place. For kids, Chuck E. Cheese was more exciting than McDonald's. There were games to play, tickets to win, prizes to collect. The party lasted longer, 2 or 3 hours instead of 2. The experience felt bigger, more immersive. Discovery Zone launched in 1989 and quickly became the hot new option for kids' parties. The concept was an indoor play center with tunnels, ball pits, climbing structures, and slides. It was designed specifically for kids' parties. The entire space was a playground. For parents, Discovery Zone solved the same problems McDonald's had solved: convenience and contained chaos. But it felt fresher, newer, more exciting. The 90s also brought a shift in parenting culture. Parents were becoming more competitive about their kids' birthdays. The party was no longer just a celebration. It was a statement, a reflection of the family's creativity, their resources, their commitment to their child. The McDonald's party, with its standardized format and low cost, did not fit this new expectation. It felt generic, uninspired, cheap. Martha Stewart's influence was part of this shift. Her magazine, her television show, her brand of aspirational domesticity encouraged parents to make everything special, handmade, perfect. Birthday parties became events to be curated, themed, photographed. The McDonald's party, which had been perfectly acceptable in 1983, felt inadequate in 1995. The cost of parties was also rising. Parents were willing to spend more, and venues were charging more. A party at Chuck E. Cheese or Discovery Zone cost twice as much as a McDonald's party, but parents paid it because the experience felt worth it. The expectation of what a birthday party should be had shifted, and McDonald's had not kept up. McDonald's itself was also changing. The company was focusing more on speed and efficiency, less on the family dining experience. Drive-through sales were becoming the dominant revenue stream, and the in-restaurant experience was deprioritized. Party rooms took up valuable space that could be used for additional seating or storage. As leases expired and locations were renovated, party rooms were often removed. The employees who had staffed the parties in the 80s were aging out of those jobs. The institutional knowledge of how to run a good party was disappearing. New employees were not trained in party management the way earlier employees had been. The parties became less consistent, less well executed. Parents noticed, and it reinforced the perception that McDonald's parties were no longer the best option. By the late 90s, the McDonald's birthday party was no longer the default. It still existed, and some parents still chose it, especially families on tight budgets or in small towns where other options were not available. But it was no longer the dominant model. The cultural moment had passed. They worked because they were easy. A parent could make one phone call or stop by the restaurant and book the party in person, and the rest was handled. They worked because they were affordable, accessible to families who could not or would not spend hundreds of dollars on a birthday party. They worked because McDonald's was already part of the routine, a place families went anyway. So having a party there did not feel like a stretch. And they worked because they met kids where they were. McDonald's was not fancy, it was not exotic, it was familiar, and that familiarity was comforting. The parties worked because they did not try to be more than they were. They were 2 hours of structured fun in a place that smelled like French fries, and that was enough. The ease was the primary reason. A mother with a full-time job, or multiple children, or just a busy life, did not have time to plan and execute an elaborate birthday party. The McDonald's party required minimal effort, one phone call to book the date, a quick stop at the store to buy a gift for the birthday kid to give to friends if she was doing that. Show up on the day, stay for 2 hours, and leave. No setup, no cleanup, no stress. The ease made it possible for mothers who otherwise might have skipped the party entirely. The affordability was also critical. $50 for a party that included food, cake, space, and entertainment was a price point most middle-class families could manage. It was not so cheap that it felt inadequate, and it was not so expensive that it required financial planning. It was right in the middle, accessible and reasonable. The familiarity was underrated as a factor. McDonald's was not a special occasion place. It was an everyday place. Kids went there with their parents after grocery shopping, on road trips, as a treat after a doctor's appointment. Because McDonald's was already familiar, having a party there felt natural. There was no intimidation, no unfamiliarity. Kids knew what to expect, and that made them comfortable. The food was also a factor. Kids liked McDonald's food. The burgers, the fries, the soda. All of it was designed to appeal to children. It was salty, fatty, sweet, simple. There were no complicated flavors, no vegetables they had to pick around, no surprises. The food was reliable, and kids appreciated that reliability. The party format worked because it was structured, but not rigid. There was a sequence to the party: food, cake, games, playground. But the sequence was flexible. If the kids wanted to play before eating, they could. If they wanted to skip the playground, that was fine too. The structure provided a framework, but it did not dictate the experience. The social aspect also mattered. The McDonald's party brought together kids who knew each other from school, but rarely saw each other outside of school. It created a social opportunity, a chance to interact in a different context, to build friendships. The party was not just about the birthday kid, it was about the group, the collective experience of being there together. The parties also worked because they were short. 2 hours was enough time to eat, play, and have fun, but not so long that kids got bored or parents got impatient. The time limit kept the energy high and the experience contained. Nobody left feeling like the party had dragged on too long. The memories created by the parties were strong because the sensory experience was strong. The smell of the fries, the taste of the cake, the sound of the singing, the feel of the plastic Happy Meal toy. All of these sensory details embedded the experience in memory. Years later, adults could remember the specifics of their McDonald's birthday party because the sensory input had been so clear and distinct. The parties worked because they were democratic. Every kid could have a McDonald's party. It did not matter if your family was rich or poor, if your mother worked or stayed home, if you lived in a house or an apartment. The McDonald's party was accessible to almost everyone, and that accessibility made it feel fair, inclusive, egalitarian. The parties worked because they were exactly what they needed to be. Nothing more, nothing less. They were not trying to be fancy or impressive. They were not trying to be memorable or Instagram-worthy. They were just trying to be fun, and for the most part, they succeeded. Ask someone who had their birthday party at McDonald's in the early 80s what they remember, and the answers are specific. The smell of the fries, the feel of the cardboard Happy Meal box, the way the cake was cut into perfect squares, the plastic toys that came with the meal. Ronald McDonald's oversized shoes. The playground afterward, the metal slide burning your legs if you went down in shorts. The sound of 24 kids singing Happy Birthday in a room with cinder block walls. These are not grand memories. They are small, sensory, specific. But they are vivid, and they have lasted. What kids remember most is not the party itself, but the feeling of the party. The feeling of being celebrated in a place that was both ordinary and special at the same time. The smell is always the first thing people mention. The smell of the fries, the grease, the restaurant. It is the sensory detail that triggers the memory most reliably. People will say, "I can still smell it, even though decades have passed." The smell is embedded in memory in a way that visual details are not. The Happy Meal box is another strong memory. The cardboard, the handle, the games printed on the outside. People remember opening the box, pulling out the toy first, doing the maze or the connect the dots while they ate. The box was part of the experience, and it has stayed in memory. The toys themselves are remembered, though not always in detail. People remember that there were toys, that they mattered, that kids traded them and compared them. Specific toys are harder to recall. Was it a Star Wars figure or a Transformer? A Hot Wheels car or a My Little Pony? The specifics blur, but the fact of the toy, the excitement of getting it, remains clear. Ronald McDonald is remembered vividly by people whose parties included him, and not at all by people whose parties did not. If Ronald showed up, that was the highlight. If he did not, his absence is not remembered as a disappointment, just as a fact. The memory is binary. Ronald was there, or he was not. The cake is remembered for its texture and sweetness. Dense, sweet, with thick frosting. People remember the way the frosting stuck to the roof of your mouth, the way the cake was cut into squares, the way it was served on paper plates. The taste of the cake was not remarkable, but it was consistent, and that consistency is what people remember. The playground is remembered for its danger. The hot metal, the hard ground, the height of the slide, the speed of the merry-go-round. People remember falling, scraping knees, burning legs on the slide. The danger was part of the fun, and it is remembered fondly, not fearfully. The singing is remembered as loud, chaotic, enthusiastic. 20 kids singing Happy Birthday, none of them on key, all of them shouting more than singing. The memory is not of the melody, but of the volume, the energy, the collective noise. The room itself is remembered in fragments. The cinder block walls, the bolted tables, the fluorescent lights, the decorations that were always the same. The memory is not of a beautiful space, but of a functional one, a space that served its purpose. What people remember most, though, is the feeling of being the center of attention, of having friends gathered because of you, of being celebrated, the feeling of excitement, of sugar, of energy, of fun. The feeling of being a kid, at a party, surrounded by other kids, all of you laughing and playing and eating together. The memories are not perfect. Details are fuzzy, timelines are confused, people and events from different parties blend together. But the core memory remains. The McDonald's birthday party, the 2 hours in the party room, the smell, the taste, the sound, the feeling. It happened, and it mattered, and it has not been forgotten. Nostalgia has made the McDonald's birthday party bigger than it was. In memory, these parties have taken on a golden glow, a sense of innocence and simplicity that may or may not have been present at the time. But nostalgia is not lying. It is just selecting. It is choosing to remember the good parts, the fun parts, the parts that felt right. The McDonald's birthday party has become a symbol of a time when childhood was less complicated, less expensive, less curated. Whether that time actually existed is beside the point. The memory of it exists, and the memory is real. The nostalgia for McDonald's birthday parties is nostalgia for a version of childhood that felt accessible, communal, and joyful in a way that is harder to find now. Nostalgia works by editing. It removes the bad parts, the boring parts, the parts that did not matter, and it keeps the parts that felt good. The McDonald's birthday party in memory is all good. The fun of the party, the excitement of the toys, the sweetness of the cake. The nostalgia does not include the kid who cried because they did not get the toy they wanted, or the kid who got hurt on the playground, or the mother who was stressed about the cost. Those parts are edited out. The editing is not dishonest. It is just how memory works. Memory is not a recording, it is a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you rebuild it from pieces. And the pieces you choose to include are the ones that matter to you. For most people, the McDonald's birthday party matters because it represents a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. That moment may have lasted only a few hours, but it was real, and it is worth remembering. The nostalgia is also comparative. The McDonald's birthday party is remembered fondly in part because it contrasts with what came after. The elaborate, expensive, Instagram-perfect parties of the 2000s and beyond. The stress, the competition, the pressure to make everything special. The McDonald's party was not like that. It was simple, easy, standardized, and in retrospect, that simplicity feels like a virtue. The nostalgia is generational. People who had McDonald's birthday parties in the early 80s are now adults, many of them parents themselves. They remember their own parties, and they compare them to the parties their own children have or expect. The comparison amplifies the nostalgia. The McDonald's party was different, and different has become better in memory. The nostalgia is also cultural. The McDonald's birthday party represents a specific moment in American culture, a moment when convenience and joy overlapped, when corporations and families found a way to coexist, when childhood was less curated and more spontaneous. That moment feels lost now, and the nostalgia for it is real. But nostalgia is tricky. It can distort. It can make the past seem better than it was. The McDonald's birthday party was not perfect. It was cheap, standardized, corporate. The food was unhealthy. The party room was utilitarian. The experience was the same for everyone, which meant it was special for no one. These are all true. But nostalgia does not care about perfect. It cares about meaning. The McDonald's birthday party meant something to the people who experienced it. It meant celebration, friendship, joy. It meant being a kid at a time when being a kid felt simple. Those meanings are real, even if the memory has been polished and edited. The nostalgia for McDonald's birthday parties is also nostalgia for a version of childhood that felt accessible. Every kid could have a McDonald's party. It did not matter if your family had money or not, if your parents were together or divorced, if you lived in a nice house or a small apartment. The party was within reach for almost everyone. That accessibility is rare now, and its absence makes the memory more powerful. The nostalgia is collective. It is not just individual people remembering their own parties. It is an entire generation sharing a common memory. The McDonald's birthday party is something millions of people experienced in more or less the same way, at more or less the same time. That shared experience creates a sense of connection, of belonging. The nostalgia is not just for the party itself, but for the feeling of being part of something bigger. The nostalgia is real, and it is valid. The McDonald's birthday party was not a perfect experience, but it was a good one. It was fun. It was easy. It was joyful. And that is worth remembering. Here is something that nostalgia often skips: the smoking. McDonald's in the early 80s allowed smoking, and not just in a separate section, but throughout the restaurant. Ashtrays sat on the tables, including the tables in the party room. Adults smoked while kids ate cake. Parents smoked while watching their children play. The smell of cigarette smoke mixed with the smell of French fries and birthday cake, and nobody thought it was strange. This was before the health campaigns, before the indoor smoking bans, before secondhand smoke became a public concern. Smoking was just part of being in a public space. It was normal. Looking back, it seems impossible. But at the time, it was simply how things were. The ashtrays were glass, heavy, with grooves around the rim to hold cigarettes. They sat on every table, right next to the salt and pepper shakers and the napkin dispenser. The ashtrays were emptied regularly by employees who would dump the butts and ash into a larger container, wipe the ashtray clean, and return it to the table. The ashtrays were as much a part of the table setting as the condiments. In the party room, ashtrays were present too. Not on the kids' tables, but on the side tables where parents might sit if they stayed, or near the entrance where the birthday kid's mother might stand and supervise. Parents would light up between tasks, taking a drag while they waited for the cake to be cut or while they watched the kids play games. The smoking was casual, automatic, unremarkable. The smoke drifted. It moved through the air, mixing with the smells of food and grease and sugar. It settled on surfaces, on clothes, on hair. Kids breathed it in without thinking about it because there was no alternative. The air in McDonald's, like the air in most public places in 1982, was full of smoke. You accepted it the way you accepted the fluorescent lighting or the tile floors. It was just there. Some parents smoked more than others. The mothers who stayed during the party often smoked while they waited, lighting one cigarette after another, tapping the ash into the tray, stubbing out the butt, and immediately lighting the next one. Smoking gave them something to do with their hands, a way to occupy the time. It was a social activity, a nervous habit, a comfort. The employees smoked too. In the back, during breaks, they would light up in the designated smoking area, which was often just a corner of the kitchen or a spot near the back door. The smoke would drift out into the dining area when the door opened, adding another layer to the already smoky atmosphere. Employees smoked between tasks, during lulls, whenever they had a free moment. It was part of the job, part of the culture. The children at the party did not smoke, obviously, but they were surrounded by it. They sat in rooms where adults were smoking. They ate food at tables where ashtrays sat within arm's reach. They breathed air that was thick with secondhand smoke, and nobody thought twice about it. There were no warnings, no concerns, no awareness that this might be harmful. The smell of cigarette smoke was so pervasive that it became part of the McDonald's smell. You could not separate the smell of fries from the smell of smoke. They were intertwined, inseparable. When you left McDonald's after a party, you smelled like smoke. Your clothes, your hair, your skin. The smell lingered, mixing with the grease smell, creating a distinctive odor that marked you as someone who had been to McDonald's. Looking back now, the smoking seems shocking. The idea that children sat in rooms full of cigarette smoke, that adults smoked while kids ate birthday cake, that this was considered normal and acceptable, feels almost unbelievable. But it was not just McDonald's. It was everywhere. Restaurants, offices, airplanes, hospitals. Smoking was ubiquitous, and the culture had not yet caught up to the science. The smoking is one of the details that nostalgia tends to skip. When people remember their McDonald's birthday party, they remember the fries, the cake, the toys, the games. They do not usually remember the smoke, or if they do, they mention it as an odd footnote, a strange detail from a different time. But the smoke was there, constant and pervasive, part of the environment, part of the experience. It is a reminder that nostalgia is selective. It remembers what it wants to remember, and it forgets the rest. The McDonald's birthday party was fun, but it was also full of cigarette smoke. Both things are true. The birthday party was part of something larger, the McDonald's industrial complex of the 70s and 80s. The restaurant was not just a place to eat, it was a place to gather, to celebrate, to mark occasions. It was part of the community infrastructure in a way that fast food restaurants are not anymore. The birthday party was one piece of that. So was the playground, the Happy Meal, the advertising that featured families and children, the partnerships with toy companies and movie studios. McDonald's was positioning itself as family-friendly, as child-centered, as the place where memories were made. The birthday party was the ultimate expression of that positioning. It was McDonald's saying, "We are not just convenient, we are part of your life." The strategy was deliberate. McDonald's understood that children influence family dining decisions. If kids wanted to go to McDonald's, parents would take them to McDonald's. The Happy Meal was designed to appeal directly to children, bypassing parental decision-making and creating demand from the bottom up. The toys, the games on the box, the small portions, all of it was engineered to make kids ask for McDonald's. The birthday party extended that strategy. It was not enough for McDonald's to be a place kids wanted to go occasionally. McDonald's wanted to be the place where kids celebrated the most important day of their year. If your birthday party was at McDonald's, if your friends' birthday parties were at McDonald's, then McDonald's was not just a restaurant. It was a significant location in your childhood landscape. The advertising reinforced this positioning. McDonald's commercials in the early 80s featured families, children, celebrations. Ronald McDonald was not selling burgers. He was selling experiences. The ads showed kids laughing, playing, having fun. The message was clear. McDonald's is where happy childhoods happen. The birthday party was the physical manifestation of that message. The partnerships with toy companies created another layer of integration into children's lives. When your Happy Meal toy was a Star Wars figure, McDonald's became connected to Star Wars in your mind. When the toy was a Transformer, or a My Little Pony, or a Hot Wheels car, McDonald's became associated with those brands, those stories, those play experiences. The toys were not just trinkets, they were cultural connectors, linking McDonald's to the broader world of children's entertainment and consumption. The playgrounds were another piece. They turned McDonald's into a destination, not just a quick stop. Families would go to McDonald's specifically so the kids could play. The playground extended the visit, increased the likelihood that parents would buy more food, and created positive associations. Kids who played at McDonald's, who had fun there, who burned energy there, would remember McDonald's fondly. They would ask to go back. The community presence was also strategic. McDonald's sponsored Little League teams, school fundraisers, local events. Ronald McDonald appeared at grand openings, parades, charity events. McDonald's positioned itself as a good corporate neighbor, a company that cared about the community. The birthday parties fit into this broader strategy of community engagement. McDonald's was not just selling food, it was embedding itself into the social fabric. The result was that McDonald's became more than a restaurant. It became an institution, a place where childhoods happened, a place that parents trusted, that kids loved, that communities accepted. The birthday party was both a product of this strategy and a reinforcement of it. Every party brought 20 kids into McDonald's, exposed them to the brand, created positive associations, and generated word-of-mouth marketing. The industrial complex metaphor is apt because the system was interconnected and self-reinforcing. The Happy Meals drove kids to McDonald's. The toys created collectability and repeat visits. The playgrounds extended visit duration. The birthday parties created emotional connections. The advertising amplified all of it. Each piece supported the others, and together they created a powerful engine of brand loyalty. By the mid-'80s, McDonald's had achieved something remarkable. It was not just a place people went to eat. It was a place people went to celebrate, to play, to be part of the community. The birthday party was the pinnacle of this achievement. It was McDonald's at its most integrated into American family life. But the industrial complex was also fragile. It depended on cultural acceptance, on the idea that convenience and corporate involvement in family life were good things. When that cultural acceptance began to erode in the 90s, when parents started questioning fast food, when competitors offered alternatives, the whole system began to falter. The birthday party was one of the first casualties. The McDonald's industrial complex of the 80s was a specific historical phenomenon. It worked because it aligned with the values and needs of that moment. Convenience was valued. Corporate reliability was trusted. Children's desires were prioritized. When those values shifted, the system that had seemed so solid began to crack. But for a brief window, roughly a decade, the system worked perfectly. McDonald's was everywhere, in every town, on every major road, and it was part of every childhood. The birthday party was the most visible, most memorable piece of that presence. When McDonald's birthday parties faded, other options rushed in to fill the space. Chuck E. Cheese, with its arcade games and animatronic band. Discovery Zone, with its tunnels and ball pits. Skating rinks, bowling alleys, trampoline parks, indoor rock climbing gyms, art studios, science centers. The list kept expanding. Birthday parties became more elaborate, more themed, more expensive. The simple 2-hour party at McDonald's gave way to 3-hour events with hired entertainers, custom cakes, and goodie bags that cost more than the entire McDonald's party had. The shift was gradual, but it was definitive. By the 2000s, the McDonald's birthday party was a relic, something parents remembered from their own childhoods but did not think to replicate for their own children. Chuck E. Cheese had always been the alternative, even during McDonald's peak years. But in the 90s, Chuck E. Cheese became the default for many families. The arcade games were the draw. Kids could play games, win tickets, redeem prizes. The experience lasted longer than a McDonald's party, and it felt more substantial. The animatronic band provided entertainment, even if it was creepy. The pizza was mediocre, but it was pizza, and kids liked pizza. Chuck E. Cheese positioned itself as the party destination, and for many families, it worked. Discovery Zone was the shooting star of the early 90s. The concept was brilliant. An indoor playground designed specifically for active play. Tunnels to crawl through, ball pits to jump into, climbing structures that went 3 stories high. For kids who had outgrown the McDonald's playground but still wanted to run and play, Discovery Zone was perfect. The parties were exhausting, chaotic, and exciting. Parents could sit and watch while kids burned energy for 2 or 3 hours. Discovery Zone expanded rapidly, but it also collapsed rapidly, bankrupt by 1999. The concept was good, but the execution and business model were flawed. Skating rinks had always existed, but they experienced a resurgence as party venues in the 90s. Roller skating was retro, fun, active. The parties included skate rental, time on the rink, pizza, and cake. The skating rink DJ would announce the birthday kid's name, play their favorite song, and make them feel special. Skating parties felt more grown-up than McDonald's parties, which appealed to kids who were aging out of the Happy Meal demographic. Bowling alleys followed a similar trajectory. They had always been party venues, but they became more popular as families moved away from fast food parties. Bowling was active, social, and relatively inexpensive. The parties included shoe rental, lane time, pizza, and cake. Some bowling alleys added arcade games and laser tag, expanding the entertainment options and making themselves more competitive. The 2000s brought even more options. Trampoline parks exploded in popularity. Indoor rock climbing gyms offered party packages. Art studios hosted painting parties. Science centers offered educational party experiences. Escape rooms, virtual reality arcades, and Ninja Warrior courses all became party venues. The variety was overwhelming, and the competition was intense. The parties also became more expensive. A trampoline park party could cost $200 or more. An art studio party with canvases and paint and instruction could run even higher. The expectation of what a birthday party should include had expanded. It was not enough to provide food and space. You needed entertainment, activities, experiences. The party had to be memorable, shareable, Instagram-worthy. The parties also became more themed. You did not just have a party, you had a superhero party, a princess party, a sports party, a science party. The theme dictated the decorations, the activities, the cake, the favors. Parents spent hours on Pinterest, looking at ideas, planning details, creating elaborate party experiences that their own parents would never have considered. The shift from McDonald's to these alternatives reflected broader cultural changes. Parents were more willing to spend money on their children's experiences. Competition among parents had intensified. The idea of what childhood should be had changed. The simple, standardized party was no longer enough. Children expected more, and parents felt obligated to provide it. But the shift also reflected a loss. The McDonald's party had been accessible to almost everyone. The newer alternatives were not. A $200 trampoline park party was out of reach for many families. The democratization of the birthday party which McDonald's had achieved was lost. Birthday parties became markers of class and status in a way they had not been before. The options kept multiplying, the prices kept rising, and the expectations kept expanding. By the 2010s, the birthday party had become an industry unto itself. Party planners, party venues, party suppliers, all competing for a share of the market. The simple McDonald's party, which had once seemed like the ultimate convenience, now seemed quaint, outdated, almost naive. A few McDonald's locations still have party rooms. They are rare, mostly in smaller towns or older suburban locations that have not been renovated. The rooms look different now, updated with brighter colors, newer furniture, digital screens instead of paper decorations. But the concept is the same: a space set aside for celebrations, a package that includes food and cake, an employee who helps coordinate. These last party rooms are holdovers, remnants of an earlier era. They still get used occasionally by parents who remember the parties from their own childhoods and want to recreate that experience for their kids. But they are no longer central to the McDonald's business model. They are a niche offering, a throwback, a curiosity. The last party rooms exist in locations that have not been remodeled since the 80s or early 90s. These are the McDonald's that still have the older architecture, the mansard roofs, the brick facades, the layouts that predate the drive-through focused redesigns. In these locations, the party room is still there, tucked into the same corner where it has always been, behind the same door with the same small window. But the rooms have been updated, at least partially. The cinder block walls might be painted a brighter color now, something more cheerful than the yellows and reds of the 80s. The furniture is newer, lighter, easier to clean. The decorations are different, often featuring current McDonald's characters or promotional themes. Some rooms have added digital screens that play videos or display personalized birthday messages. The updates are incremental, cosmetic, designed to make the rooms feel less dated without requiring a complete renovation. The parties that happen in these rooms are different too. The format is similar: food, cake, games, but the execution has changed. The Happy Meals are still the foundation, but the toys are tied to current movies and shows, not the classics of the 80s. The cake might be ordered from an outside bakery rather than made in-house. The games are led by a designated party host rather than a random employee. The professionalization of children's parties has touched even these last holdouts. The parents who book these rooms are a specific demographic. Some are nostalgic, wanting to give their kids the same experience they had. Some are budget conscious, choosing McDonald's because it is still cheaper than the alternatives. Some are in small towns where other options do not exist. And some are simply practical, choosing convenience over elaboration. These parents are swimming against the cultural current, choosing a birthday party option that most of their peers have abandoned. The kids who attend these parties have mixed reactions. Some are excited, especially younger kids who still love McDonald's and are not yet aware that their party is different from what other kids are having. Some are disappointed, especially older kids who have attended elaborate parties at trampoline parks and climbing gyms and know that their McDonald's party is simpler, cheaper, less impressive. And some are indifferent, happy to be celebrating with friends regardless of the venue. The employees who staff these parties are often unaware of the history. They know the party room exists, they know the procedures for setting up and running a party, but they do not know that 20 or 30 years ago, this was standard, that every McDonald's had a party room, that thousands of kids celebrated their birthdays here every weekend. To the current employees, the party room is just an odd feature of an older building, a quirk of this particular location. The party rooms are slowly disappearing. As locations are renovated or rebuilt, the party rooms are eliminated. The space is converted to additional seating, to storage, to expanded kitchen areas. The business case for party rooms no longer exists. They take up valuable space, require dedicated staff time, and generate minimal revenue. From a corporate perspective, they are inefficient, outdated, not worth maintaining. Some locations have tried to adapt. They offer party packages without a dedicated party room, using regular seating areas during slower hours. They promote take-home party packs, where parents can pick up Happy Meals and a cake and host the party at home or in a park. These adaptations acknowledge that there is still some demand for McDonald's birthday parties, but they do not require the infrastructure of a dedicated party room. The last party rooms are relics. They are physical reminders of a time when McDonald's was central to American childhood, when birthday parties were simple and standardized, when convenience was more important than customization. They are monuments to a specific cultural moment, and they are slowly being erased. For people who remember the McDonald's birthday parties of the 80s, stumbling across one of these last party rooms can be jarring. It is like finding a piece of your childhood preserved, but also changed, updated, no longer quite what it was. The room is there, but the context is gone. The parties still happen, but they are not the same. The memories are intact, but the reality has moved on. The last party rooms will not last much longer. In 10 years, maybe 20, they will all be gone. The party room as a standard feature of McDonald's will be forgotten, known only through photographs and memories. And when they are gone, a small piece of 80s childhood will be gone with them. So that was it. The McDonald's birthday party. 2 hours in a room that smelled like French fries and cake. 20 kids, a pile of Happy Meals, a sheet cake cut into squares, and maybe if you were lucky, a man in a red wig and oversized shoes. It was not fancy. It was not unique. It was not Instagram-worthy. But for a decade, give or take, it was how millions of American children celebrated the most important day of their year. The party worked because it did not try to be more than it was. It was affordable, accessible, simple. It solved problems for parents and created joy for children. It brought kids together, created memories, and marked a moment. And then it faded, replaced by options that promised more, cost more, required more. The culture shifted, the expectations changed, and the McDonald's party became a relic of a different time. But the memories remain. The smell of the fries, the taste of the cake, the sound of 20 kids singing happy birthday in a cinder-block room, the feel of the plastic toy in your hand, the burn of the metal slide on a sunny afternoon. These are not grand memories, but they are vivid. They are specific. They are real. And for the people who live them, they are part of what childhood meant. The McDonald's birthday party was a small thing in the grand scheme, a corporate product, a marketing strategy, a convenience offered and accepted. But it was also more than that. It was a place where friendships were built, where celebrations happened, where kids felt special for a few hours. It was part of the infrastructure of childhood in a specific time and place. And when it disappeared, something was lost. Nostalgia is tricky. It edits, it selects, it polishes, it remembers the good and forgets the rest. The McDonald's birthday party was not perfect. The food was unhealthy. The room was utilitarian. The air was full of cigarette smoke. The experience was standardized, corporate, designed to maximize efficiency and profit. All of that is true. But it is also true that the parties were fun, the kids loved them, that they mattered. Maybe what we are nostalgic for is not the party itself, but what the party represented. A time when childhood felt simpler, when celebrations did not require elaborate planning or significant expense, when convenience was not yet synonymous with compromise. A time when a 2-hour party at McDonald's was enough, because being together with friends, eating food you liked, and being celebrated was all you really needed. That time is gone. The party rooms have been converted to storage. The ashtrays have been removed. The playgrounds have been replaced or rebuilt with safer equipment. Ronald McDonald makes fewer appearances. The Happy Meal toys are different. The culture has moved on. And maybe that is fine. Maybe it is even good. But it is worth remembering what was there, what it felt like, why it mattered. If you had your birthday party at McDonald's in the early 80s, or if you attended one, you carry a piece of that experience with you. The memory is still there, filed away somewhere, ready to surface when you smell French fries, or hear Happy Birthday sung off-key, or see a picture of a Happy Meal box from 1983. The memory is real, even if the reality that created it has changed beyond recognition. The McDonald's birthday party was a moment, a specific, small, ordinary moment in the long history of American childhood. But moments matter. They shape us, connect us, become part of who we are. And this moment, this simple party in a fast food restaurant, mattered to a lot of people. It still does. So here is to the McDonald's birthday parties of the 1980s. To the party rooms with cinder-block walls and bolted tables. To the Happy Meals with toys that broke within a week. To the sheet cakes with thick frosting. To the games led by bored teenage employees. To the playgrounds with hot metal slides. To Ronald McDonald and his oversized shoes. To the mothers who stayed and the mothers who left. To the smell of fries mixed with cigarette smoke. To the 2 hours that felt both ordinary and special. It happened. It mattered. And it has not been forgotten. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, I would be grateful if you would hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything and helps keep these stories alive. And if you have memories of your own McDonald's birthday party, or if you never had one but wish you did, leave a comment below. I love hearing your stories. Thanks for listening, son. Until next time, take care of yourself. And maybe just maybe, the next time you drive past a McDonald's, you will remember what it felt like to be 7 years old, walking through those doors, knowing that for the next 2 hours, everything was going to be just fine. Good night.